Dear audience, my name is Valentina Kalidji, and today on LAFMD we are discussing in the framework of the talk show Moldova European Union. Our guest today is Mr. Ambassador of Denmark to Republic of Moldova, Mr. Soren Jensen. Hello, Mr. Jensen. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for your desire to talk with the Gagauzian audience, with the Gagauzian people, and welcome to Gagauzia.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
As well as I know, Mr. Jensen, your previous mandate was in Bucharest, in Romania. Before you had experience in Prague, in Brussels, in Washington, DC, and this is the first residency of yours, Ambassador of Denmark in Moldova. Could you please share what was the decision to make the first embassy in Moldova, and what is the level of the collaboration between our countries, considering that you have a new embassy here in our country?
Well, the reason we opened an embassy in Moldova was because of the geopolitical situation in the region, for the first thing. And the second thing, of course, was that we wanted to support Moldova's ambitions of joining the European Union. So the embassy is there to build bilateral ties, but also to help Moldova achieve its political ambitions of joining EU.
Considering that you have been in Moldova for 1 year or maybe more, yeah? 2 years already. What's your first impressions, maybe you remember, about Moldova, maybe your insights, maybe what surprised you about people, about culture, maybe some experiences that you liked or maybe not?
Well, I came to Moldova first time I think in 1995 or 1996. So I came here many years ago. And of course, from then to now is a huge change. But even during the time I was ambassador in Romania and also ambassador in Moldova, I would say many things have changed in Moldova. And I think particularly the change from, let's say, 2018, 19 to now is very much the atmosphere. There's a much more positive atmosphere. There's a much more hopeful atmosphere among people. I think they see some possibility of a positive development in Moldova. Remember, in 1819, it was the period of the oligarchs, the captured state, and now we have had a pro-European government for a period of time, which was even re-elected. So there's a different sentiment, I think, and that is very visible.
So you see the evolution exactly from those years, 2018, 2019. So something changed at that year. You saw in the perception of the people, yeah?
I think so. I can feel it among the business people. They see more prospects. When I travel the country and I visit, I always try to visit with the young people, with the youth at the universities or the schools. I also see a change when I ask them what their plans are. I mean, before, I think more of them were thinking to leave the country. Now, more and more of them want to stay in the country and have their future, have their family, have their education, have their career.
Is it connected somehow to Moldova's aspiration to become the member of the EU, and considering that Denmark has a presidency in the EU Council this year? What do you think? So which are the hopes for the Moldova, and how Denmark expresses the support for Moldova on this path?
Yes, I think that there is hope for Moldova. Moldova has a lot of homework still to do, and it's important to remember that. And the homework has to be done before you can join. It's like if you want to join a club, there are certain requirements, and these requirements have to be filled. But Moldova is on good track to do that. There was an enlargement report made by the Commission, the European Commission, which was announced even yesterday, and a lot of positive assessments of Moldova's progress. So I think that Moldova is on the positive track. And it needs to continue. The elections were a big help because now you have another period where you have a pro-European government. That pro-European government, I know, will work very hard. They need, of course, to have a broader, let's say, political backing. So hopefully more political forces, also in parliament, will support this. And I think also the people will support this. And in this case, Gagauzia is an interesting point because Gagauzia is among the areas of Moldova which gets most support from the European Union, which has a lot of exports to the European Union, but which actually has the least support for the European Union, which is an interesting development. I know there are a lot of reasons for this in Gagauzia, but I think this is an interesting debate to have with the people here in Gagauzia. What exactly is it that they like or that they don't like about Europe?
And considering that, what do you think, which efforts should be taken in order to make Gagauzia closer to the understanding of the Moldovan European part, to changing a bit perspective of the people. What do you think as an ambassador, as a person who spoke with people from a local perspective?
Well, I think simply information is important. Access to honest and fair information about what Europe is, also maybe what Europe is not. I think that people in Moldova in general and in Gagauzia perhaps in particular have been given a lot of mis and disinformation especially from Russia about what is Europe, and they're told that Europe is terrible, Europe is one big LGBT conspiracy, and a lot of things that are not true. And I think when people experience, maybe they meet people from Europe, representatives from Europe, or they start to travel in Europe more, they will understand that these things are not true. Europe is not the one conducting an aggression, a war in neighboring Ukraine. It's not us who's killing innocent people every day in Ukraine. This is Russia, and the difference is I think very clear.
Yes, but disinformation makes a lot to make those people to believe in different things, not very objective maybe. And what's your opinion about efforts of Moldova, what she's doing on the part of countering disinformation? And you see that there's a lot of fake news and a lot of propaganda and manipulation in media. So how do you think it influences still a lot and will influence in the future? Or maybe we should take more responsibility to that, more activities, more resources maybe to counter disinformation?
Well, I think Moldova has been doing a very good job in trying to counter this disinformation, but they are also up against a very big and resourceful enemy here. I mean, Russia has used something between 150 and maybe up to 300 million euro, that's really a lot of money, on these efforts in Moldova at last year's elections and referendum, but also at this year's parliamentary election. So it's a very difficult game that we're playing here. Moldova is getting support and help. For example, Denmark is also helping Moldova when it comes to dealing with, for example, cyber attacks, to cyber security, which is very important. So we can avoid that, for example, the websites of the election commission or other authorities is laid down during the campaign. But we're also supporting the free media here. And I think what is really important is media literacy, that people get better at simply identifying when something is probably not true. I normally tell, especially the young people when I meet with them, look, if you see something on the internet, on some website, on your TikTok or Telegram or wherever you go, that seems unlikely or that seems too good or too bad to be true, it probably is not true. And whatever you see, always try to think, could this be true or not? And of course, you need a certain natural degree of suspicion, but we also need to overcome a certain reluctance to want to ask questions. And I think that's the natural bit. We try to teach the children in our schools to be critical to what they see, both to what the government says and what comes from other sources. Because we are all Western countries, all democracies are threatened right now by authoritarian regimes which use disinformation in their campaigns against democracy.
So your advice will be to question everything, yeah, to develop critical thinking and to ask why this information appears in my feed, why do I need to believe that? So we actually have the problem with that people believe too much into news, what they read, but we have a problem that people not very believe into institutions, government institutions. We know that Denmark succeed a lot in that, in those justice reforms, in those good governance reforms. What's your opinion about the efforts of Moldova regarding those reforms that are needed to be the EU associates in the future?
I think Moldova is making good progress on these reforms. I think these things take time, but you asked me before about what I can see that has changed. And when I say that I see a more positive atmosphere, I also see a Moldova that is becoming more resilient, is able to stand off some of the Russian attempts at misinformation, where people maybe earlier were afraid of Russia, for good reason, because Russia is a big power and Russia is a military power. I think Moldovans are becoming more, as I say, resilient. They're becoming stronger, and they are becoming more, let's say, focused on their own interests. Their interest, of course, is security. But how do you achieve your security? Do you do it by being all alone? Trying to not to scare the bear or not to provoke the bear? Is that the best way? This is what Moldova has been doing for many, many years. Or do you do it by joining other small countries like Denmark, like the Baltic states, like Poland, like other countries in Europe, and working together with them in preventing disinformation and interference in the country? Let's remember, Europe does not have a majority country. Europe is actually a group of countries where we're all minorities. Even the Germans are not the majority. The French are not the majority in Europe. So the good thing about Europe is that we are a group of countries where nobody is dominating. I mean, if you compare that to being linked to Russia, which you were for many years, clearly the Russians were the dominating force. In Europe, there's not a group which is dominating the others. It is a collaboration. It is a collaboration where the small countries are also respected. And that is very important. That is why I think Moldova wants to join. And that's why a country like Denmark can only recommend that Moldova become part of Europe. We've also heard from other countries who have minorities, like you have in here in Gagauzia.
It's my next question, actually, was
that being member of Europe also makes it easier for the Gagauz minority to be another minority in a country in a country that has minorities, but also in a union that has minorities, because we're all minorities. So I think, and of course there are ways Gagauzia can also learn from, I know from other countries who have, let's say, autonomous regions to various degrees. We have in my country also autonomous regions. We have Greenland, we have the Faroe Islands, which has both of them have special status. So there are things we can learn from each other. The point is, though, not to fall in the trap and believe that the authoritarian approach or the authoritarian solution is the best one, because it is not. I mean, no one is going to thank you if you decide to accept or to be afraid. You need to develop the country for the best of the people. And Moldova tried for 35 years to be balancing between East and West. But if you compare what happened in Moldova to what happened in countries like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, who were also Soviet republics, these countries are much better off now. They earn much more money. They have higher pensions. On all parameters, they're doing better than Moldova, except for the wine, I have to say. Apart from the wine, these countries are doing better. And why is that? It's because they joined the community of free countries, of democratic countries, of economic prosperous countries. This is the difference.
So the comparison and larger perspective shows that people hasn't to be afraid of that, of being small minority, because all the Europe is the minority is basically what's united together, and unity in diversity. I always say that motto, which is very important, and for Gagauz people is very important to understand and to hear from you these words. And speaking about the security, you said about the cyber security, and as well as I know, Denmark launched the support to Moldova about 62 million of the euros in the past few years. In the next few years, which areas also will be followed during this program of help?
Well, our programs in Moldova are basically in three areas. One big area is energy, so it's about becoming energy independent. It's about having more efficient use of energy, and it's about having more green energy. And in a way, they all work together, because if you have more efficient energy, you're also more energy independent. If you have more green energy, you can produce it yourself. You're also more energy independent. For the individual Moldovan consumer, if it's a house owner or if they live in a flat or whatever, energy efficiency is extremely important, because the Moldovans are actually paying a lot more money for their energy today, not because it's more expensive, but because they use more, because they simply use more energy to heat their homes, because their homes are badly insulated. And this is a very simple, low-hanging fruit, something that's easy to adjust. It requires investment. The government has investments, and donors are willing to put more money into this area, because it's a very important area. So energy is one strong sector. The other sector is what I would call the democratization area. very much linked to the European Union approach, but we're, for example, supporting Moldova when it comes to the changing the legal system, vetting the judges, vetting the prosecutors, combating corruption in the legal system, which is very important, because if you do not fight corruption in the legal system, you're not going to get any investments. No one is going to put money in a country if they don't trust the legal system. It's that simple.
Logical, yeah.
And other areas are the civil society. We support civil society on a number of areas, and we support free media, as you know, here, because your medium here is one of the ones that receive support. We don't support it by paying the bills and by paying the salaries, but we support it by projects which are focused on, for example, critical journalism or media literacy. And the security sector programs we're helping you establish a crisis management capacity, so you're better able to deal with natural crises, but all man-made crises. We are helping you develop your cybersecurity, as I said already, and then we're also helping develop your capability in your military, which is basically a question of being able to defend yourself in situations. It's funny because the part of the propaganda when Denmark started this program was that we were force militarizing Moldova, which I couldn't help finding slightly amusing, thinking that Denmark, a small country, would come and force militarize Moldova. And we are also told that Moldova is neutral, so Moldova doesn't need an army. I mean, this is a very strange concept. I mean, if you're neutral, you need probably the biggest army because you don't have anyone to help you if you're attacked. I mean, in my country, we're members of an alliance, of course. So if we are attacked, we will be helped by our allied. But if you're all alone, you need to be able to protect yourself by yourself.
Especially considering security risks that we have on the border, so that's...
Yes, we saw what happened to Ukraine. They were alone. We saw what happened in Sweden and in Finland. After they saw what Russia did to Ukraine, they joined an alliance, because they knew that we don't want to be alone. We don't want to risk being on our own in a situation with a neighbor like that. You know, so this is a lesson learned, I think, from these countries. They learned it like this. Moldova has a different situation. You have a constitutional neutrality, but it doesn't mean that you cannot have an army or defense that allows you to defend yourself, including from incoming drones, for example, including from incursions.
Especially we had on the border the cases of those security risks, and we are basically in a hybrid war, informational war that's happening everywhere during the elections and during the other important political events in the country. So it's completely understandable that we need support and we rely on our European partners. Speaking about the people-to-people projects, if we speak about the youth projects, is there any projects that are on the exchange of the students, maybe some scholarships connected to Denmark? How youth from Moldova can connect to the youth from Denmark, for example?
Well, first of all, we are, of course, as members of EU and as associate member of EU, you have access also to these EU programs, Erasmus as being the main one. So that's one option. That's probably the main option. But I should maybe also say about the Danish assistance that mainly we work through partners, and especially the part that would cover youth and cover other areas is a fund. We call it the New Democracy Fund, and basically Danish organizations, and it could be youth organizations, but it could also be employer organizations, it could also be handicap organizations, it could be human rights institutes. We have a number of organizations who have Moldovan counterparts. So, for example, the Danish Youth Federation is partnering with CNTM here in Moldova.
National Council of Youth.
Mm-hmm. And they do projects together, which then get funding from this fund. But so it's not me at the embassy or my colleagues in the ministry who are saying now we should do like this, you know, like 5-year plans. This is done really peer-to-peer. This is done between the people who have the knowledge in Denmark and the people who want to share that knowledge in Moldova. I think this is very healthy. For example, our Human Rights Institute is working with the Office of the Ombudsman here in Moldova. For example, our handicap organizations are working with your handicap organization. For example, our employer organizations are working with Moldovan employer organizations. For example, helping them how do they need to adjust, for example, their environmental standards to meet EU requirements. This is very practical. This is peer-to-peer. This is business, almost business to business, teaching them what has Denmark learned. How can we do this in a good way? And I think this is a very efficient way of working instead of having these. Often you have these overall programs where big agreements are signed. We also do that. We made one recently on energy, which I'm looking forward to implementing in the coming years. But I think the backbone of our support to Moldova is very much this peer-to-peer cooperation.
You said about the business, and we can discuss about the trade. If any trade is happening between our countries, any business maybe investing in Moldova, because I know that we have dozens of companies with Danish capital already. So what's the perspectives in that area?
Well, I think, again, the situation, of course, is that Moldova has two things going against it right now. One is the war in Ukraine. It does keep many businesses away. If they look around the world and they are looking for a nice place to invest, they might not choose a country that is next to a war. So the Ukraine situation is a problem. And the other one is the rule of law. Moldova has moved forward and made a lot of progress. And I think this will become better, and it is becoming better, and it will be easier to attract investments. But I think it's also a small market. So for many larger investors, of course, often they might look to more like the region. And for example, it's many Danish businesses are engaged in Romania, and I was ambassador to Romania, so I know all of them. And my hope is that I can attract them. Okay, you're doing business in Romania. Why don't you expand your business or even your investment maybe to Moldova? So I think this is maybe the best chance in the short term of having more companies come in is actually, encouraging companies who are already in Romania to move into Moldova. I think that on sectors, I see the IT sector as a very potential sector also for Danish investors, because we have a lot of companies already now who are outsourcing their program work, including in Romania, and who could just as well be doing it in Moldova. Agribusiness. I mean, Denmark is historically a very strong agricultural country. We have a lot of technologies. We have a lot of know-how on how to specialize in, let's say, qualifying our products in a way that make them more marketable, for example. This is something Moldova, which is also a strong agriculture country, might learn from, how we organize our agriculture. There's a lot of modernization that probably is needed in Moldova. And then I think services is the largest sector in Moldova, and Denmark has a lot of experience in services. This could also be an area where we could see more direct cooperation, perhaps even more investments in Moldova. I didn't mention energy, but energy being one of our large areas of cooperation is also. We are having later in November, the first business-to-business meetings here in Moldova between, I think, 9 or 10 Danish companies are coming here to meet with Moldovan companies within the what's called district heating. So making more efficient the district heating. This is again back to Moldova becoming a more energy efficient country. I know that I use this slogan very often when I talk to people, but it's important to remember that the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use.
Or energy that you can renew, at least, create the renewables sources of energy.
Mm-hmm.
In that area, I know that Denmark also has a lot of experience, so
mm-hmm.
maybe you can share with Moldova this experience, that we can use it, because
mm-hmm.
of course we can teach people in one day to use less, but we can at least somehow to contribute to the renewal of the energy
mm-hmm.
resources.
And these are all parts of this agreement we have made with Moldova, working on these areas now between our two ministries of energy.
Oh, that's great. We will see forward for that for sure. And maybe the last question will be about your prognosis on the relations with Moldova for the further 5 years in the perspective of our maybe EU integration, of EU enlargement. What can you say about that?
Well, I know that there are big ambitions to join the European Union, and as I said, Denmark supports these ambitions. We also know that it's a merit-based process, which means that Moldova has to fulfill a number of criteria. We're here to help you with that. We are working actively within the fields I mentioned, and we'll probably have other fields over time. I came to Moldova with one colleague, and then we hired some staff. But the embassy is already growing, and I think we're already more than 1/3 larger than we were when we first planned it. And that's simply because the areas of cooperation are growing. I hope to see more Danish tourists in Moldova. We are actually beginning to see organized tours coming to Moldova. Younger people are coming, but also older people who have more time on their hands, let's say, like to come to Moldova. They enjoy coming maybe for a long weekend or short week to experience the country, the monasteries, the history, and the wine. And the wine is an asset which I think you can continue to build on. For many Danes who maybe didn't know much about Moldova, the recent years, the developments here, the exciting elections you've had. I mean, to be honest, people were following these elections in Denmark to see really, because it's kind of a
there
little,
is interest for that.
it's a microcosm of the geopolitical situation, right? Kind of the East-West is comprised here. Who's going to win? Is it going to be the pro-Russians or is it going to be the pro-Europeans? You know? So that people are following that, and I think there's a lot of sympathy for, or I know there's a lot of sympathy for Moldova, not only in Denmark but in Europe. And this is important because then more people will come. When more people come, they will also enjoy the wine, the food, and what is needed if we need more trade, especially if we need more Moldovan trade to Denmark, is that people start asking for Moldovan products in Denmark. And normally, historically, this has always happened in Denmark. We started drinking Italian wine because people started traveling to Italy. We started drinking Spanish wine because people started traveling to Spain. We always drank French wines because, there's only French wine, right? And now I'm sure the same will happen when more and more people go to Moldova, arrive here, taste the wine, experience the country in general, then more people will come and they will start to ask for Moldovan products. There are also many Moldovans living in Denmark. They have a good reputation as trustworthy, good, loyal, qualified workers in all kinds of fields. So this is also kind of a good people-to-people contact. They are good ambassadors for Moldova. And I think more and more Danes will come here and be good ambassadors for Denmark, I hope. And otherwise I will be an ambassador until then.
So the people can spread the word about Moldova going here. Tourism is spreading the progress, so it's only good things will happen. So nice to hear that. And thank you for expressing your opinions. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for being open to participate in this talk show. And I'm thanking our audience for being with us. Follow LAFMD on all the platforms. We were following the program Moldova European Union.